Hey everyone, welcome back to the OrtoTech garage. My name's Keith. Take a look behind me. I've got this really nasty looking engine bay. It's filthy, disgusting, and I want to teach you guys all the tips and tricks that I have in order to get this thing looking good without doing any harm or damage to it. Let's get right into it. Before we get started on this job, I've just set aside a couple of things we're going to be using here. Just talk about them for 2 seconds. I've got a couple of products here. These are Meguiar's products. If you guys have watched my video, you know that I like these products. They seem to work really well. I'm kind of a fan of the Meguiar's stuff, even though I have no affiliation with them. So there's other products you can use out there. I'm just going to tell you what I'm using here today for this video. This is Meguiar's Hyper Dressing. I've got it mixed in a solution of 1:1. So a half a bottle of solution, Hyper Dressing, and then a half a bottle of water to fill it up the rest of the way. And then I've got some super degreaser. You can mix this as strong as you need to. I've got this mixed right here about 2:1, so 2 parts water and 1 part cleaner. And that's strong enough, plenty for underneath the hood of this car to get most of the dirt and debris off. I've also got over here a soft, this brush is fairly soft and it's got a lot of bristles on it. So this is great for getting inside those little nooks and crannies without being too abrasive on anything under the hood. You can kind of run it all over the surfaces underneath. Plus some of these horsehair brushes, probably not even real horsehair, maybe boar's hair or plastic for all we know. These are not very hard. There's 2 different stiffnesses on here, maybe like a soft and a medium. And same thing with a smaller brush if you need to get in a tighter area. I've got a little bit of brake cleaner here for a couple of stubborn greasy spots. I'll be using that. And then I've got a bundle of rags here, so just some microfibers and maybe a couple of regular old shop towels. Other than that, we'll be using an air compressor to hook up to this blowgun, and obviously your water hose. No high pressure washer needed. All right, now that I've shown you all the tools we're going to be using and the products that we're going to be using on this car, I want to get into the specifics of where you can and can't go with this water and where the danger zones are. On a vehicle like this that's newer, a modern car, there's no carburetor, there's no distributor, there's no ignition wires on it, and most of the electrical connectors and things are all weather sealed. So they're designed to be able to take in a little bit of water without anything getting inside the connectors or inside the computer. All those things are sealed up. There's not a lot that you really need to be worried about on a modern car. It's really when we get into some of the older cars. I mean, think 1980s, cars that have a distributor cap and rotor, cars that have ignition wires coming off the distributor cap, spark plugs that are more exposed on the sides of the engine or even on the top of the engine. And definitely carburetors and old style air cleaners are a great source for you to cause a problem if you get water intrusion in there. We don't want any water inside the engine whatsoever. Now, it's still possible when you look at a car like this that you have some of the air filters exposed. Some of the ductwork is easy to spray water into. This would be one of those areas. What I would recommend, you take some plastic and cover that up, maybe a little bit of duct tape around it, and make sure you don't get any water in the air filter, no water in the air box. Those are kind of critical spots. We can't have any water going inside the engine ever. That you have a potential to really damage your engine. So that's one of the most critical parts. The second most problematic area is the ignition system. So we talked about the distributor cap and rotor on an older car. Even on a newer vehicle like this that has coil on plug style ignition. So each individual cylinder has an ignition coil that sits on top of the spark plug. You want to make sure you don't get any water pushed down underneath that. So they do have little rubber seals on there that can handle a little bit of water, but you can't put any high pressure down on those ignition coils, because if you get water down underneath that, it fills up the spark plug tube. So there'll be a tube maybe this deep or so where the coil reaches all the way down, and that tube has a potential to fill up with some water if you get intrusion underneath it. So we really want to avoid that. If you feel like you need to cover that up with some plastic, I would recommend you do that. I've done a lot of these, and I'm not going to put any water, any pressure anywhere near that stuff. We're just going to rinse it gently. I'm not too worried about it, but you might end up with a misfire if you don't cover it up. So I would recommend you do that if you have this style set up anyway, just to keep yourself safe. The alternator is another place where you may want to cover up some of the alternator, or at least avoid the high pressure. Now, in a vehicle like this, the alternator is all the way down the bottom of the engine. It's designed to take a little bit of water on. It's not really going to hurt it. We just don't want to go high pressure there. So that's why when you guys are doing these engine bay details, you could use a high pressure washer, but I don't ever recommend it. It's just not necessary. If there's some problem areas, scrub them by hand, use a brush, that's fine, and then rinse it gently with some water. The only other point I would make would be the brake fluid. if you get water in the brake fluid, you have a potential to basically destroy the brake fluid. The brake fluid is hygroscopic. It's supposed to absorb moisture. That's its job. And if you get any high pressure or anything up underneath the cap for the reservoir somehow, you have potential to just kind of ruin your brake fluid, and we don't want to do that at all ever. So if you feel like you need to cover that up, you're welcome to do that. But if you follow my tips, you should be okay. No high pressure anywhere. And if you need a little extra scrubbing, do that by hand. Let's get into it. First thing I want to do here, I've got some leaves and debris up near the intake vent that goes inside the dashboard. So I want to blow all that stuff out of there. I kind of go around the edges and try to remove any of the large leaves and debris and see if we can blow them out of the car. Let's do that. The next step, I'm going to hose everything down, and then we're going to get everything nice and wet, and then I'll spray some cleaner on all those surfaces. I want to make mention of a couple things here. One, this hood insulation, especially on an older car, can become very deteriorated over time. If you get too close with your hose, even a regular hose that's not high pressure, there's a potential to do some damage to it. You can tear it, rip it, even with just a light water pressure. So try to keep back from that as far as you can. Don't do any heavy scrubbing on this or anything. I'm going to show you how to clean that once we get close to it, but just be careful with your water on the insulation. So as I'm rinsing this engine down, I wanted to remind you to never spray cold water on a hot engine. So I don't like to have an engine hot when I'm doing an engine bay detail. If you want to run it for maybe 5 minutes or so, just to get it slightly warmed up, it'll clean better. But if you get it hot, or if you try to do this to a car you've been driving recently, that's just a bad idea. You have a potential to possibly warp or crack metal parts when you're hitting them with cold water on an extremely hot part. I'll be spraying this degreaser over pretty much all these surfaces, everything under the hood. There's not too many places you can't go with this. I would tell you be a little careful depending on the product that you're using to keep this off the paint job, especially around the fenders and things. If you get some on there, just rinse it off pretty quickly. Don't let it sit on the paint for very long. These products are fairly strong. We're designed to take grease and things off, so we don't want to do any extra damage over here. Or it's probably going to strip a little bit of wax off regardless if you get a little overspray on it. But we definitely don't want to let it sit on the paint too long. I'm going to take a couple of my brushes now and start scrubbing a lot of these parts and see if we can get these cleaned up as nice as possible. I know sometimes people ask me, do you need to disconnect the batteries or anything you need to do there? If it makes you feel safer, you can definitely disconnect the negative end of the cable, or you can take the battery out of the car. Generally, water is not enough to provide any conductivity between the positive and negative terminal, so I've never seen a problem here where you're gonna short a battery out by spraying it with water. It's just not something I've ever seen, so I don't think you need to worry too much about that. All right, so a vehicle that's as dirty as this one, probably gonna rinse it down. I'm going to double check it after I rinse it and see if there's some problem areas I need to hit a little bit harder. So I've had a few spots on the vehicle that were a little bit stubborn, hard to get off. I had to go through maybe a third time and really scrub it good with that small brush to try to get some of those details cleaned up. There's probably going to be some spots on there that you're not going to be able to remove, stains and things that won't come off very easily. One more trick I have, a little bit of brake cleaner. I like to use on some of these parts. I've got a fluid reservoir over here. It's got some really hard stains on it that won't come off. So sometimes this cleaner will get most of that off, and I'll get it with a little rag here and see if I can scrub on it manually and see if I can get a little bit cleaner than it is right now. I don't think this vehicle has ever had an engine bay detail done to it. It's got some really stubborn spots on it. That's why you see me using a little bit of brake cleaner, spray some on a rag here, not directly on the paint up here. It's okay for mechanical parts, but I want to keep it off spraying off the paint, just a little bit on a rag here, and try to touch up a couple of these little areas that are really stubborn. I did want to take a second while we're here and talk about this hood insulation. I remember I told you it's very easy to destroy. It's very brittle a lot of times over as it gets older. And maybe just take a small microfiber rag, fold it up neatly. If you want to spray a little cleaner on it, this one doesn't look too bad. But if yours got some spots on it, maybe spray some of that super degreaser, not brake cleaner, but super degreaser on a microfiber rag, and then just gently wipe these surfaces down. So you don't want to apply too much pressure, especially around the edges. These things have a tendency just to kind of peel apart. You can probably not see here, but this is already starting to peel, and we don't want to make it any worse. And especially as that gets waterlogged, it's going to have a tendency to want to really crumble apart, so super gentle on that. Now that I think that I've got this cleaned up as good as it's going to get, I'm going to go ahead and blow this off with my air blowgun. I just want to get a lot of the heavy water off. I don't want to force it down in anywhere. I really just want to pick it up out of the areas where it's going to pool inside. So I'm just gently going to go around the car, blow as much water off as I can, and then we're going to let the rest of this air dry. So I'm using this, high pressure air blower basically. It's got shop air pressure on it, 150 pounds, whatever we got here. So just, again, being very careful how close I'm getting with this. I really just want to push some water out gently, not any forceful use of this. If you don't happen to have an air compressor at home with a little blowgun like this one, maybe you can use a leaf blower if you have one at the house, something like that. If you don't have anything, I guess your last option is just let it air dry. This area over here with the insulation, it's going to collect a lot of water. It's going to soak it up like a sponge. So you really want to kind of leave this hood open for a while and let this water work its way down to the bottom edge of there. Once you've got it sitting for quite a while, you can come back with a dry microfiber and try to wick some of the water out the bottom of that insulation. You can see as I'm working this, it's just kind of gently pushing some of the water out of here. I really feel like the hood is the most neglected part of everything under the hood. It seems like people never want to look up. They're always looking down at the engine, but this area here really collects a lot of grime and road debris. That's why I like to spend a little extra time on it. So I'm just coming through with my microfiber towel, touching up again some of these heavier areas that look like they still have a couple of spots on it. A lot of times by now, we've had enough cleaning product on there, enough time to saturate in there where it just wipes off fairly easy with the microfiber, some areas that maybe we didn't see while it was wet. All right, so my engine's pretty dry right now. The last thing I want to do is I want to apply some dressing, see if we can get that old plastic that's kind of faded and stuff to make it pop a little bit. And that's what the dressing will do. It's going to enhance some of that darkness of the colors. And, especially I like anything that has a pop of color in it, like this little red handle on the battery or the washer fluid cap or these reservoirs and stuff. I always like to pay a little extra attention to those. They just bring a little bit of color and interest to the areas under the hood. So, just pay special attention to that while you're working around here. This product, you want to make sure you keep it off the serpentine belt. So the belt is actually covered a very large portion of it by this air intake ductwork. So it's not easy for me to spray this on here. If your belt is a little bit more easily accessible, you might want to cover it up with some plastic before you spray a little hyperdressing. If this gets on the belt, it has a potential to make it squeak or squeal, and that's tough to get rid of sometimes, even if you try to clean it off later. So just keep this off your belt area, but most of the rest of the components under here are pretty much fair game with this product. I've been fairly liberal just spraying this hyperdressing on the engine bay area. There's some areas that have puddled up a little bit. I like to wipe those up with the microfiber towel, and then I'm just going to wipe every surface, try to smooth everything out, make it even. You don't want a lot of this product on there, bubbling and looking like it's wet all the time. So just going to bring a lot of that back just by going through and wiping everything down. I'm just using very light air pressure here. I can control the amount of air that's coming out of here with this trigger grip that's on here. So just very light amount of pressure. Just trying to, like I said, remove some of these puddles that are in these little cavities all over the place. You don't want it pooling in there. My last step with this dressing, I'm going to come through with a dry microfiber towel. I'm going to buff everything back until I like the way that it looks. So I'm really just trying to remove as much of this dressing as possible. I know some people really like a wet look. That's not really what I'm going for here. I want it to look clean, but not wet. So the dressing is obviously going to enhance some of this plastic a little bit, but I don't want it dripping or super slick and shiny, looking greasy. That's why I'm coming through with this dry microfiber. I want to remove as much of this product as possible and make all the surfaces look somewhat even in their tone. Well guys, this is looking pretty good. Come on in here and take a look what I've exposed underneath all this dirt. See that right behind here? Yeah, it's the like and subscribe button. Consider subscribing to our channel so you get notifications when we release new content. It's free and it really helps our channel grow. We'd appreciate it. There you have it, guys. That's my whole process here that I use when I'm detailing engine bays, whether it's to sell a car or just to make it look nice. It's important that you understand that you keep your expectations realistic. This car is obviously in pretty rough condition. It's got a lot of miles on it. It's over 15 years old. I don't think anybody's ever touched under the hood of this car with a cleaning product in its entire history of its life. So, you know, when you're looking at these things, you really want to just be very objective about how you want it to look when you're done. We're looking for significant improvement, and I think we've done a great job with this one. This is probably about as good as it's going to look without putting brand new parts in there. So just keep your expectations realistic. I hope you guys learned something here. I hope you're not afraid to go ahead and tackle this on your own vehicle. Just be extra careful, pay attention to the things that I told you in the video, and you should be in good shape. Really hope you guys are enjoying this type of content. We're going to have more videos here for you. Take a look at the next one we got coming up, and thanks for joining us.